Hello, this is Hailey Hubbard, and this is my presentation on HIV and AIDS. So what is HIV and AIDS? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. This is a virus that attacks the immune system cells, which are what help our bodies fight infection and disease. HIV can make our body more sustainable to other infections and diseases. This will cover a little bit as it relates back to 2020 this year. If not treated, HIV can lead to AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. This is the late stage of the HIV virus. This occurs when an individual's immune system has become horribly damaged by the virus. And it only normally becomes damaged if one doesn't know that they have the virus and they're not taking medication, or if they're not taking medication responsibly, if they aren't participating in their therapy. That's normally the only time that it leads to AIDS. AIDS is the version of HIV that is known for killing people who have been diagnosed with HIV. So how is HIV/AIDS contracted? HIV and AIDS are transmitted through bodily fluids. These bodily fluids include blood, semen, vaginal fluid, rectal fluid, and breast milk. There are two common ways that HIV is transmitted, at least the most common ways. The first one is by having vaginal or anal sex with someone who is already infected by HIV. Of the two, anal sex is the more risky one, and this is normally, HIV is really only transferred when there is no protection used during sex or there is no antiretroviral medication involved for those who do not have HIV. The other most common way is sharing drug items such as needles with someone who is infected with HIV. This is more common than this last one that I'm going to talk about. So the last one is a mother who is infected with HIV transferring it to her unborn baby. This can happen through birth, this can happen through breast milk. This one's not as common now because we have so much medicine that help deal with the transmission of this virus. So I decided to break this down into three main categories. They're all based off of two of them are based off of a 2018 graph. So I broke them down starting with sex, and by this I mean gender, male and female. So on this graph that's pictured to the right, 16,017 individuals with HIV participated in the study. 11,903 of them were men living with HIV, while 4,114 were women living with HIV. When comparing the two, men mainly contracted the disease from homosexual relations, about 80% of the 11,000, while women mainly contracted HIV through heterosexual relations, about 92 of their 4,000. On the women's pie chart, there is no homosexual contact that they developed the disease from, but on the male side, there is both heterosexual and homosexual. The homosexual one, as I said, was 80%, and the heterosexual contact one is 14%. They also include injection drug use, which is women is at 8%, and then for men, it's at about 4%. So the next way I decided to break this down was by race, and this is part of the same study. So again, there is 16,000 individuals who participated, and then it breaks down into three main races that were used in the study. So 14,000 of those who participated, 14,945 were African American, both male and female. 8,665 were Hispanic and Latino, both male and female, and then 7,422 were white, both male and female. This graph shows, as well as both male and female, how they contracted it, mainly looking at sexual contact. So there's a pretty large disparity in the races. The main one we can see is 9,499 of the 14,000 African American individuals developed the disease from male-to-male sexual contact, and that's like the largest one. And then we can also see Hispanic and Latinos, 7,543 of their 8,000 contracted the disease from male-to-male contact, and then 6,423 males from the 7,000 white individuals also contracted the disease from heterosexual contact or homosexual contact between men. And then lastly, I decided to look at age. So this is based on a 2018 graph as well. The most common place that you see HIV pop up in age, like age-wise, is in the youth between the ages of 13 to 24. So on the left graph, 7,807 individuals participated. 6,284 were young men, while 978 were young women. It shows that they both contracted from both forms of sexual contact and possibly drug use. When looking at this, it's obvious that young men have contracted it the most. And then if you look closely at the graph, it shows that the young men who did contract HIV contracted it from male to male sexual contact. And then it also explains that most of the new HIV diagnoses among youth were among young gay and bisexual men. And then if we move on to looking at the 50 plus group, which is on the right side, 6,363 individuals participated, 3,019 were men, and then 1,564 were women. This also included sexual contact and drug use. This again shows that the majority of who had contracted HIV was men from male-to-male sexual contact, and of the people aged 50 and older, most of the new HIV diagnoses were among men. Based off of all three of these, we can tell that HIV mostly affects the homosexual population, and I think that's a huge problem and something that we should really be looking into. So I added some other statistics that I thought would be important to add. So 30.8 million people were living with HIV as of 2019. 1.7 million have become newly infected by HIV as of 2019. 690,000 have died from AIDS as of 2019. 32.7 million have died from AIDS since its first appearance in the 1980s. And then, although all of this sounds bad, we have progressed towards a better situation with HIV and AIDS, as the AIDS mortality rate has decreased by 39% since 2010 compared to 2019. So why is it important? And why should we be focusing on it in public health? So HIV is preventable. There are many antiviral medications to fight against HIV and to help those who have HIV, as well as help those who don't have HIV keep themselves from contracting HIV. So it's preventable, and people should be informed so that way they know that this is out there and is preventable. It is something that as people we don't really look into as an issue across the globe. I feel as though we kind of just know that HIV and AIDS is a thing, but we don't really pay attention to how many people it actually affects, and that it's affecting a decent chunk of our society. It has become increasingly harder to warn younger generations about HIV and AIDS. It's not the cool thing to participate in abstinence. Nobody really wants to listen during sexual education classes, so it's harder to educate the youth about what this could mean. And then, as I mentioned, it affects a large part of our community. It affects mostly men. It's most commonly seen in men, and it's most commonly seen in homosexual men, which is a big chunk of our society, and that's something that we should be looking into as to why it's only affecting these people, how we can help inform them better. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in recent times, as of 2020, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on those who already have HIV. So we should be focusing more on it because of that, due to the existing issue with their already horrible immune systems due to HIV. Those who do have HIV are becoming infected with COVID easier, and it's affecting them more as they are seen with an individual with an underlying health condition. So this is something we should be looking at, especially in 2020, as to how to help these people and help them keep it under control. So moving on to medication and cure. As of right now, in 2020, there is no cure for the HIV and AIDS virus, but there is medication to help those who have the virus. It won't cure it, but it will help them keep it under control. This main medication, or therapy, as it is called, is an antiretroviral therapy, ART for short. This treatment helps individuals who have HIV keep it under control and keep the infection from further damaging the immune system and eventually turning into AIDS. It will allow the person to deal with the HIV and keep it at levels that are okay for the body, eventually making all things zero when it relates to HIV, but it'll never leave their body until there is a cure. There's also a medication for those who do not suffer from HIV to take if they have a partner who does have HIV. This medication is called pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP. There's plenty of commercials that are around TV and the internet on this PrEP medication. This medication is used as a form of HIV prevention. This means that if you were to be with someone who has HIV and you are participating in unprotected sex or any sort of risky behavior at all, this would help you keep from getting HIV, but it has to be done effectively. You must listen to what your doctor's advising. There's all kinds of things that, you have to really pay attention to be on this medication. It can also help if you are participating in sharing needles, as well as I mentioned before that there are medications that help mothers not transfer their HIV to their baby. So thus far, we've made quite a bit of progress in the medication for AIDS and HIV, but we're still looking for that one thing that'll help cure it. So then finally are the preventions. So primary prevention is obviously the most basic for HIV and AIDS. This is mainly just educating the public of its risks, what it is, and how you can help other people, and how you can inform yourself and look into HIV and AIDS. This is mainly happening in sex ed classes, explaining how to use a condom, why to use a condom, the safety behind using protection. It's very important. And then there's also the idea that those who may be practicing unsafe sex should be getting tested frequently in order to catch it early if they were to end up being diagnosed with HIV. The secondary prevention moves more on to prevention strategies for those who are already living with HIV. So this could be informing new partners of an HIV status if you do have one, explaining to them what you're doing for yourself in order to keep it under control, and explain to them how they could help. This screening frequently to see how the virus is going, to see if you're keeping it under control, because if you aren't, then you might want to talk to your doctor about changing medication. And then also speaking to partners, again, who may be at risk to start a PrEP-based medication to help them keep from contracting the disease. And then tertiary prevention, I believe, is a little harder to go over with HIV and AIDS. The ideal prevention for this would be a cure or a vaccination that would help fight against HIV or help not even get it in the first place. That would ideally be it, and that's what officials are still looking into. But as of right now, it is medications, as we have just talked about, PrEP included, as well as ART therapy, medications used between mother and baby, those types of things, and that keep it at a manageable level. And then finally, these are my resources. And that's it. Thank you.